joining us on the Western Pizza Guest Hotline. Longtime broadcaster of such events as Saskatoon Blades Hockey. Used to fall asleep to this guy on listening, not because of the broadcast, it was because it was late at night. And
Sure.
I was 6 or 7 years
find a way to
old.
save that.
Yeah.
What a great way to tee up.
You're just changing feet now.
World Junior Hockey, International Hockey, and then if you ever heard on the Monday Nooner podcast, our interview, the snowmobile races in Waldheim, Saskatchewan. Dennis Beyak taking some time to join us today on New Year's Eve. Thanks a lot, Dennis.
Guys, how are you?
It's fun. Yeah, it's New Year's. We're having a good time here. You're out in BC. What part of BC are you in?
In lovely West Kelowna.
Wow.
Came out here years ago when I was still in Toronto, and then moved out here on a permanent basis when I was done with the Winnipeg Jets. So it's been a great winter so far. No snow to speak of, so things are good.
I was going to say, do they even get winter out there? It's like a mild spring usually.
You know what? It really varies. 2 years ago, November 1st, we golfed on October 31st in shorts. And then about November 2nd, it snowed and it stayed right till March. And I'm not talking just a skip of snow. It was lots of snow. Last year, no snow until into January. This year, we've had a little bit, and the last few days have been 2-3 Celsius, so it's gone. So it's good.
So this is the first year you haven't called any World Junior Hockey. Like how does that feel for you?
You know what? It was different on the first game because our side was normally the first game of the tournament.
Yeah.
So we were always the ones with Dave Reed and Laura Dyken and Craig Button and myself. We were always the ones that came on and said, hey, welcome to whatever World Junior Championship it was. X number of years for the tournament, X number of years for TSN. So we were kind of always the ones to kind of get it going. So when I watched the opening the other morning with Craig and Brian Woodrick and Laura and Dave, it seemed a little strange to not be doing what they were doing. But then, you know what? I'm a bit of a realist anyway, so you kind of just became a fan, and I've been watching probably more than I expected to watch.
The team is somewhat littered with Sasky content, the 4 players. Pete Anholt, who was on the show last week, joined us. Al Murray, scouting here. So I find myself more invested this year because I got 2 buddies that have kids playing on the team, which makes me feel real old, but super proud and exciting. But then Dennis is, as a guy that's seen it, and I want to get some of the older ones here in a bit, but Canada losing to Latvia. Like I was actually so happy for the Latvian kids and what that raw emotion, but that's where this tournament's getting to now.
Anybody who has been involved with the IIHF, whether it be World Championship, whether it be World Junior, you develop a soft spot in your heart for Latvia. Their fans are terrific. Their hockey program is getting better by the year. We saw some results at the World Championship a couple of years ago where they medaled, and we're seeing the results of that now at the World Junior. They are a good hockey team. They play with so much heart. They play with so much desire. Maybe not the most talented team in the tournament, but they give it everything they have, and they are very capable of giving teams a hard game as they did with Canada. So, yeah, it was kind of, disappointing to see Canada lose. We always expect them to go in there and just roll through the preliminaries. But if you're going to pull for a team that's other than Canada, I think you find a lot of people in the TSN world who will pull for Latvia.
Barney and I were talking about the World Juniors earlier, and Canada, not saying they're not as strong as they used to be, but all the other teams are coming up. What are some of those teams that, in your history, those teams that kind of surprised you that you can think of?
Well, you go back to, I think it's 10 years ago now, Denmark won its first ever game at the World Junior. And the excitement that we saw from that team in Toronto, and how the city of Toronto adopted the Denmark team, just because they were so exciting and they tried so hard. You go on to, I think it was 2019 in Victoria, Kazakhstan tried so hard, and the fans just the same thing. They adopted that team, and at the end of every game, they got a standing ovation as they left the ice. So now you fast forward to this tournament. First time ever Latvia wins 2 games in the preliminary round. Kazakhstan picks up a point in dramatic fashion yesterday with the 2 shorthanded goals that forced the overtime and gave Slovakia a bit of a scare. So all those little things, when you add them up, and you got to remember, most of my highlights come from the other pool, not the Canadian pool. That was always kind of my responsibility with Craig Button, was to do the other side that Canada wasn't on. So that's where most of my highlights come from. But from the summer tournament, the Mason McTavish play at the goal line that led to Kent Johnson's game-winning goal. I mean, those sequences will live in infamy. I mean, you can't replace the excitement and the magnitude of those little plays. So, you're always going to have an exciting gold medal game, and the U.S. program just gets better and better and better. But it's the other countries that you see them get better that you like to see. Because for years, you went into the tournament and I mean, you pretty much knew who was going to be in the gold medal game. That's, you got Finland now, you got Sweden, you've got Czechia, you've got Slovakia that's coming, Canada, the U.S. that we'll see later tonight. So I think from a big picture, the tournament has gotten way better. Last year in Gothenburg, Sweden, which going in, I knew that was going to be my last one. It was exciting. The European ones are always maybe a little bit more exciting because you have the Canadian contingent of fans that come and they become very close, and they all kind of hang together in that. So lots of good memories.
Is there one game that you go back to from calling where a goaltender stole the show? Because I go back, we joked about 91, and I remember I was in grade 8 at Sask Place, and it was Canada against but the goalie was Paulie Yaks for whoever, Austria or whoever it was, and he must have stopped 80 shots. And you look back at some of these highlights, and I joked yesterday with Dave King, but it's really not even joking, that these goalies from these countries would show up, Dennis, in like worse than street hockey equipment that our kids are playing in, and they would have like Tupperware containers on their head with masks, and then Canada's putting up, or the Russians are putting up 12 and 13, and now the goaltending is amazing. Was there, so going back to my original question, sorry, is a goaltending performance where a guy just stood on his head that stands out for you?
Well, there was lots, Dobish. I mean, there's ones that come to mind. I'm not going to start naming because I'll forget first names, but Kazakhstan, the one I talked about in Victoria, the one you mentioned, but there's always in the tournament a European goalie that comes in and absolutely stands on his head. They're not as sheltered anymore as maybe they used to be. Before they came from some Division II junior program in Slovakia and came into this tournament kind of as an unknown. But now it's getting, where they play in the USHL or they play in the OHL or you've seen them at the U18s. And so they're not as sheltered as they used to be. But if you want to talk about a game and maybe a team, the 2016 World Junior in Finland, the Patrick Laine, Sebastian Aho, Jesse Puljujärvi show that as an 18-year-olds were a terrific line. Finland went on to win it in overtime. Kaplan, I think, got the winner if memory serves. So those performances stand out, but that's what keeps some of these European teams in it, is because they're goaltending. And you know what? What's interesting, guys, is they're not programmed to be the type of goaltender that we see in North America. The reverse H and stand up here and go down to one knee and all leave the top, the top corner open. And if the shooter gets it, good shot. They kind of play an unorthodox style, but they stop the puck. Whether it's from Dominik Hasek's days or whatever the case may be. But and you know what, you end up kind of pulling for those guys because of how they play and the performance they put in, and we saw that with the Latvian goalie in this tournament.
I grew up being a broadcasting nerd. Everyone has their favorite calls. Do you believe in miracles? All that fun stuff. What is, as from your point of view, what's your best call or one of your favorites?
Well,
we'll never forget.
Probably my favorite, and it's not World Junior related. There were some big ones in the World Junior. when back going all the way back to what I mentioned before about Denmark winning its first ever World Junior game. And then for the first time when Latvia makes the quarterfinals for the first time. So those are all big, but the one from a personal standpoint that kind of always stood out for me was Matt Sundin provided lots of highlights when I was in Toronto. Edmonton with Doug Waite, Jason Art, those days when I was there, saves by Curtis Joseph. But I think the one that stands out was in Winnipeg when Patrick Laine faced Austin Matthews for the first time. And it was, they started a big week in Winnipeg. It was Heritage Week in Winnipeg. So there was lots of ex-players there, and it was a big week for the franchise. Well, Austin Matthews comes in and the Leafs are up like 3-0 or 4-1 in the second period. And then Patrick Laine goes to work and gets the third goal in overtime after Austin Matthews misses a chance. And it was Patrick Laine's first NHL hat trick. It was a win for the Jets, which was big. It was against Toronto, which was big as well. But everybody has kind of asked me, where did the emotion in that one came from? It came from the week that was coming up in Winnipeg. It was such a big week for the Winnipeg Jets, who had come back to the National Hockey League. This was their chance to be center stage with the Heritage Classic coming up. And it was a big week for the franchise. And to lose a game at home, let alone to beat the Toronto, because you know what it's like in Winnipeg. Half the rink is Toronto Maple Leaf jerseys. And I know what that would have meant short term. Long term, it wouldn't have meant anything. But short term, what it would have meant to the franchise to lose that game and start the week off on a downer. And instead, it ends up being an overtime game. And so that goal by Patrick Laine, I think, and again, some of that goes back to the 2016 World Junior that I talked about in Finland. That's where I first saw Patrick Laine, and that's when I became a big fan of Patrick Laine and still am today. And I know he's had some ups and downs. He's battled some injuries, but I'm a big Patrick Laine fan.
Before I let you go, I want to get your take on what's going on in the NHL. And your Winnipeg Jets, and Jets are off to a good start. What do you think about the league here after the break, and Four Nations Cup as well in there?
Well, shocked that the Rangers haven't done something with their management and coaching. And I'm not saying it's all their fault, but usually by this time of the year, if the New York Rangers are in last place in their division, something is going to happen. And maybe that's been the surprise. Boston's already made the change. Vancouver's going through some injuries. We get a lot of people in this area here that are big Vancouver Canuck fans. So it's been a bit of a difficult start for them. But certainly really happy for Scott Arniel to see what he's done with the Winnipeg Jets. I think Adam Lowry was a terrific choice to be captain of that franchise, and I think he's done a great job. And they've got a good team, and they stumble every now and then, which I don't think hurts teams to have a bit of a stumble, but they always seem to bounce back. Four Nations Cup, and this will be big picture. And again, we talk about Kazakhstan and the World Junior. This is where these international tournaments miss Russia, and I agree wholeheartedly that they shouldn't be in for what's happened. But even the Four Nations Cup, I mean, would it be better as a Five Nations Cup with Russia being there? Yes. But again, I don't want to start any controversy here. I 100% as to why they're not there and they shouldn't be there. The Four Nations Cup, I'm not big on mid-season tournaments. I like the idea of the Olympics because that's when they are. It's not like somebody said, hey, let's put the Olympics. This is when they've always been. Winter Olympics have always been in February. I'm not big on mid-season fabricated tournaments. And that's what this Four Nations Cup is. Is the hockey going to be good? Yes, it is. Is it good for the sport? Yes, it is. And everything else. But, I worry about injuries and things like that. But it'll be a good tournament.
That's what I was saying on the show a couple weeks ago. It's like I would do the analytics on the teams that are good in the NHL that are going to make a run that aren't sending many guys. And then I'm going to double down gambling wise on those teams because then those guys are getting 2 weeks in Cancun or Cabo or wherever. Look
no further than Tampa with Kucherov and Vasilevsky. I mean, those two guys are going to come back from that break rested as heck and and away they go. So, and there's other teams, exactly the point you just made. There's other teams that fall into the same category.
Unless they go back home. I've seen videos of the Russian clubs when those guys go partying, and it's hard on the body. Dennis, again, thanks so much for taking some time today. I know you're a busy guy. Big game tonight. I appreciate it. Let's catch up again.
All right, you guys. Happy New Year to you. Take care. And I didn't realize that Melville, New York, that was called the Garlic Belt.
Hey, Kenora, Ituna, we can't leave out those people as well. Awesome. Thanks, Dennis.
All right. Happy New Year, boys. Take care.
Happy New Year. Dennis Beyak, legendary play-by-play voice, joining us from Kelowna, British Columbia. Time for a quick break. It is the all-new SportsCage, streaming at sportscage.com.